Each everyone. So a friend of mine just lent me their subscription to Hulu, and I've been watching Reservation Dogs. So within about a day, I had binge watched the entire first season, and I'll say it's a very good show. If you haven't watched it, um, if you want to get some idea of what reservation life is like in Oklahoma, um, watch the show. I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate, but I'm not going to say it's inaccurate either because um, I know other stories. And I lived out there for a time, and I didn't grow up out there. Okay. My mom was born in Oklahoma, and she spent a lot of her childhood between Tulsa and Welika. And Welika is where her mama's people are from. And so, and many of them are buried there. So, um, it's she didn't grow up out there either, though, because her parents moved to California when she was a kid, and she went back and forth. She still visited family, and they came out to visit her. But you know, I didn't grow up out there. But what I saw out there when I was living out there, um, I know some other stories. I know other stories that are kind of weird and crazy, but I like the characters. I like the pothead medicine man uncle. Okay, kind of uncle cousin, as he's called. It's funny because I have a cousin Barbie who kind of became my sister cousin. So they thought that she was my sister. Went to the Okima hospital. It's like, oh, your sister. It's like, oh, cousin, oh, sister, cousin, right? And so, anyway, um, yeah, it was kind of cool. But and I've been to the Okima hospital quite a bit. And so I didn't deal with like the mean lady at the front register. I didn't deal with someone like that. They were actually really nice in Okima. Like they really were. Like everyone was great. So, I mean, my experience was way different than apparently these other kids going to what might be a regular IHS clinic. I don't know. I don't know. But they obviously weren't filming that at the Okima clinic or hospital. Originally it was a clinic. But, very interesting. Very, these kids make some really stupid decisions. And it's like fake gang bullshit. It's just like, you know, it's, and then they all kind of become friends, sort of. Spoilers, okay? Um, watch it. Despite whatever spoilers I give, watch it. Now, Wes Studi's in it, and he's a pretty cool character in that. Interesting character. I'm not gonna say he's like, are any of these people heroes? Like yes and no. It's funny because he makes some like he steals a car at one point, but then brings it back. Um, the cop, played by Zane or Zahn McClarendon, uh, from The Sun and from Miko. He's a good actor, very good actor. He's kind of like this, kind of like he's a cop, but he's all kind of a dumbass in some ways. He reminds me of the character you might find in, I don't know, like King of the Hill or something. And I'm not talking John Redcorn necessarily. I'm talking like maybe a combination of him with some other characters in that cartoon. But no, he's I like the ghost Indian. It's like the crap that comes out of his mouth is something else. He's a very like, I mean, there's so much anachronism, but I guess if you're a ghost who's been floating around since Little Bighorn, and now you're going among other tribes that are not your people, and you're like appearing to these kids and even to some of the old men, like the pothead uncle, and giving them advice. If you're doing all this stuff, then I guess you would become aware of a bunch of modern pop songs and songs from the 80s and things like that. I mean, I guess you would become aware of all this stuff over time. It's just, the guy is hilarious. So I'm not going to give away too much of that, but like he's a great character. Um, so yeah, and he appears to one of the kids, and he appears to the old man, and it's pretty funny stuff. I'm not gonna lie. Um, it's cool because you'll have words like Stehetki and, other words that are Muskogee, Mado. Um, it's just, it's cool that Sterling Harjo, who's like Creek and Seminole, he's the creator of the show. The other guy, dang it, I can't remember the name of the other guy who's one of the main dudes. He's been involved in other projects that aren't so good, but this is a great project. Okay, I previously watched Four Sheets of the Wind, which is one of Sterling Harjo's earlier projects, and I swear I walked on some of those roads or drove down some of those roads that Chufi is walking down. Chufi means rabbit in Muskogee, and like before I moved to Oklahoma, I'd watched that movie, like really not long before I moved out there, and then yeah, like having gone down some of those roads, like looking for family cemeteries and stuff, I swear, like where Chufi's walking, I picked up a turtle out there. But anyway, I digress. Back to Reservation Dogs. Yeah, so it's nice that Sterling Harjo is really getting more of the of where he's from, right? And more of the Muskogee type culture in his shows, along with other things too. I mean, you got these characters, these old men who are like quasi medicine, but not really, and they're bringing in other totally anachronistic stuff, and it's obvious to the kids who are watching it that these guys are just kind of like full of crap to some degree, and it's the way it's done is pretty entertaining. So definitely recommend checking it out. Now I'm going to give some spoilers on the episode Mabel. Okay, just watched it last night, and it's amazing because the grandmother Mabel looks a lot like my great grandma, like a lot. And I'm looking at her laying on her bed with her eyes closed, like getting ready to die. I'm looking at pictures of in my head of my great grandmother, and I'm like going, whoa, that looks like my great grandmother. And like for that reason, it's pretty cool to see that. But here's the thing: there's a couple episodes, I can't remember if no, roofing, I think is roof or roofing, I think is the previous episode where the main character kind of does some roofing, or I don't want to say the main character. I mean, there's several main characters in the show, really. But Bear does some construction with these guys. And, it's obvious to me that his mom was kind of hot-blooded in her youth. And still kind of is in some ways, while being a responsible mom, unlike the dad who's totally, like, pretty much out of the picture, or might as well be. He totally sucks. And all these guys know him and know that he sucks as a dad. And they're kind of like helping this kid, teaching him some man stuff. Good episode. It really kind of like, I don't want to say brought closure to some aspects of earlier in the series, but, like as a dad, I can relate to the father of the kid that died at the beginning of, or he was already dead at the beginning of the series. Like, in episode 1 that he's dead, and they kind of start fleshing out what happened as the series goes on. But yeah, like Daniel's dad, I can relate to him, not because my son or any of my kids, any of my stepkids have passed away, but yeah, just because, like, I mean, I'm a dad, my kid's my life, and that character feels like, he could have done more for his kid. Maybe he shouldn't have drank and things like that. But you see him as a hardworking dad. I'm a hardworking dad. I'm in the trades. So it's like, just from that. But to see him kind of like initially be very kind of standoffish, but then start taking Bear under his wing a little bit more and opening up and even admitting to his own faults it was very big of his character to do that. And, so yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool. But Mabel, so this character, Alora Dannon, and they constantly make Willow references about that, and as they should, essentially. It's funny. It's pretty funny. There's a junkyard, some tweakers at the junkyard. Yeah, you gotta check that out. It's the guy who runs it is this kind of like pseudo intellectual guy who it's like tries to be in touch with native heritage that he probably doesn't have. He's definitely techie, you know. But yeah. Um, but yeah, Mabel. So Lord Dannon's the granddaughter Mabel, and you find out that her mother passed away, and you start to see how certain characters in the show, like the cousin uncle, was really close to the mom. Like that was like his sister, basically. They call each other brother and sister, but they were cousins. And like he's the first one to say, "Oh yeah, you look just like her," right? Again, spoilers. If you want to watch the show, watch this episode and really feel how powerful it is, stop watching this video and go watch that episode, and then come back and finish this video. Okay. Now I'm going to continue. So you see all these friends, even this girl that was basically like who kicked with her gang, kicked Bear's ass, and but then hooks up with, you know, not in a sexual way, but like, you know, connects herself with Laura Dannon, and then she goes to the grandmother's funeral. Like none of Bear's friends, none of Laura's friends want her there, but they tolerate her. And then the aunt is nice. The aunt, by the way, was not in the picture ever since her sister died. She basically disappeared. It also becomes clear that Bear's mom is the sister of Laura's mom and of the aunt. That kind of becomes clear. It wasn't that clear before, but it kind of becomes clear at this point in the show. Maybe not like, you know, written word for word, but it's like you can kind of tell. But the aunt that like went in the service is, you know, just, oh, I held you as a baby. I loved you so much. I held you as a baby. And, you know, but like I went off to the service when your mom died. I had to get away from things and see the world and da-da-da. And it's like the uncle. Again, spoilers. Like, he was so close to her mom and he wanted to help her because she needed help with something. And he, you know, she asked if, you know, if he can tell her about her mom. And it was like, no. But then later on he says, no, it's not because I don't want to. It's because I'll cry. It's like, damn. So, but you look at the aunt, and this is where my, I need to be more forgiving about stuff. And I have been in the past. But then I saw this episode. I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, she shows up from the city and she's all this wonderful, amazing person, right? But it's like she wasn't around Alora's entire life, basically. Not since she was like a baby and her mom died when she was, I think, 3. It's like you show up out of nowhere and now all of a sudden now's the time for family to get together. The cop was right. The cop who's trying to hook up with her, by the way. He's like, you know, I mean, he's saying that people should get together, you know, not just when, you know, with death. And she's like, well, why not with death? Well, maybe because if you're around the last, you know, 15 years, whatever it was, 12, 13 years, your niece would have actually had an aunt, you know, that, you know, was around that gave a shit, you know, like that's the way I see it. Gonna be fair. When my dad died, most of his people disappeared. Not from each other, but from us. My aunt, you know, my dad's favorite sister, he's closest to, she reached out once in a while. Not often, but she did reach out once in a while. And I appreciate that. We needed them, and we didn't have them in our lives. But they all had each other. All the cousins had each other. But we didn't. I'm the one who got everyone connected through Facebook. I reached out to my cousin Luke, because of his unusual name. I looked at him, I'm like, holy crap, he looks like an older version of my dad as a child, as a teenager. That has to be him. That has to be my aunt's son. Sure enough. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 add everybody on Facebook. They all start popping up, and then we start talking. And then all of a sudden, my older half-brother, he's able to get in touch. Eventually, he moves up north where they live, and then they hang out all the time. Now he's back here, okay? And so it's just, I'm glad that he got to connect more. I'm glad that I got to finally connect with them, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful for them. But I also see why my brother Josh, the one that's crazy, was really upset when the aunt that did reach out once in a while showed up after we didn't see her for like, you know, 20 years, you know, and like 20 plus years. And it's just like that's rough. It's rough because I mean, you know, our older brother, our half brother, you know, he was there all happy to you know get to know our aunt. And then Josh was like, "Yeah, well, it would have been nice having you around, you know." And to be honest, he went outside and you know cried a little bit. And I went out there with him, and you know, I talked with him and gave him a hug. And you know, the truth is, he had every right to feel that way. Looking back, especially after watching this episode, Mabel, my brother had every right to be pissed off because look, better late than never, right? And I'm not trying to be mean. I love my dad's people. I'm not trying to, you know, be bitter at all retroactively, but I understand how he felt, and he was right to feel that way because we were kind of not part of the picture, and they would come down. Turns out to visit each other and each other's kids, and there's even the aunt that reached out more. We could have seen them while I was growing up. I didn't have them growing up. Josh didn't have them growing up. Matt didn't have them growing up. We didn't have them growing up. I mean, we find out that we have a paternal half sister with kids around the time Michael was born. You know, it's like, you know, like we couldn't have known about her until DNA happened, you know, and now she's getting to know all the family that actually didn't live too far away, funny enough. And I'm glad. They all reached out. In all fairness, when they found out about her, they all reached out. When they found out about me on social media, we reconnected, and it was good. And I was living in Muskogee Nation at the time with family. Funny enough, like you know, while I'm with my Creek family, my white family are reaching out and we're reconnecting after decades. It shouldn't have been decades. So, but like I said, better late than never. I want to step back and not be bitter about it, you know. But my brother had a right to be bitter. It's not just because he's crazy and can't control his emotions as well. He had every right to feel that way. I think that Alora's character in Reservation Dogs should have been a little more upset. And I could tell, I could see, look in the character's eyes, that there's a lot of unsaid emotions. The way that actress played the character was pretty, maybe she played it better than she realized. Okay, because I could see emotion in those eyes. I could see bitterness when the aunt was like, I know I haven't been around. Da, 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 da. No, he gives her a big fat hug, and it's like the aunt is crying for herself. She's feeling bad for herself and trying to like, and she knows what a shitty aunt that she was the entire last, you know, decade plus, never being around at all. And when she could have been, it wasn't like she lived halfway across the country like a lot of my paternal relatives, you know, or even a lot of my maternal relatives. Okay, like she just wasn't there, and that was by choice because she was too sad about her sister dying that she couldn't be there to take care of her niece and to actually be, you know, someone in her life. And you'd also see that there's some unspoken tension between her and Bear's mom. And she's like, "Are we good?" It's like, "Yeah, we're good." But you can tell that like there's something that happened. I'm sure it gets fleshed out later in the series, or will, you know, well, the show's over. I think it went 3 seasons and it's done. Um, but yeah, yeah. I mean, I want to see that get fleshed out because there's definitely something going on there. So, um, yeah, that kind of hit closer to home more than I thought it would. Um, it made me feel a certain way that I haven't felt about my aunts and uncle that were never really around. Um, I've been forgiving because I want to have people in my life, and I want to be the bigger, better man about stuff. But the truth is, my brother had every right to feel the way he felt. And Alora's character, I'm hoping as I watch the series, I see more of it get fleshed out. So please, no spoilers in the comment section. I got to watch it. Okay. I'll do another review on the series afterwards. But yeah, I thought about my Aunt Arlene, my great aunt, and I didn't see her all the time, but every few years she would pop in and we'd see her. And we'd see her for extended periods of time, and I lived with her for an extended period of time. And I just think about, like, sometimes it's not your parent or even an immediate aunt or uncle that kind of takes up the reins of being a parent or a grandparent for a nephew or niece, and does their part to help you with your life. So it's just, yeah, miss Aunt Arlene. I plan to go back there and, when I go visit, maybe go to the annual festival, I hope, this year. We'll see. I need to go visit my Aunt Arlene's grave and pay my respects, finally. She's been gone for 11 years. And I think about it every day. So anyway, that's my long-winded yet brief review on Reservation Dogs. It's a great show. Honestly, it's award-winning for good reasons, I think. I'm biased because I'm Muskogee and I did live back there for a time and I have people back there. But I mean, objectively, it's a good, funny show. Honestly, like, I mean, the ghost guy, he's hilarious. Like, my friend asked me what my favorite character is. I don't know, because I find Alora relatable because of her, family dynamic. I find Bear relatable because, he's having to become a man. I know what it's like to struggle because my father died when I was a kid. So, and his was never around by choice, which is just shitty. Yeah, I mean, the characters are very relatable. These are not just some Hollywood creations. Like, there's a very, very real element, especially with the wake or the almost wake when Mabel's dying. Like, the way the people were there, the way they were falling asleep on couches and things like that. I mean, it felt like reality. It didn't feel like what you would typically see in a Hollywood film surrounding either a funeral, a wake, or someone on their deathbed. It felt way more real. So, and I had a friend, I had a friend whose dad was dying, and I was in the room, and I wasn't there when he died, but when I was there, kind of supporting her, like, I could feel the angel of death, and I could see the support of the family, and I could see the way people were, and their personalities weren't the same as these Indians and reservation dogs, but I mean, I'd say there's similarity, the way human experiences, the way people who are close to their relatives are when someone's dying, someone that they love very much, who they've depended on, and who's been there for them. There's a lot in common. So anyway, that's my review for now. Go watch the show on Hulu. You won't regret it. It's it's worth watching. All right, Mado.